Hey guys, like, comment, subscribe. Doing a final NBA video for the night, looking at the Boston Celtics. They haven't done much this year in this team. They're looking kind of like they had the last few years, like a very solid team, but not a team that's going to actually represent the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals. Just feels like there's a bit missing. And I mean, they have a $28.5 million trade exception they still haven't used. And I don't know what it is with Danny Ainge in terms of not pulling the trigger on certain trades, but he's super hesitant to get rid of draft picks. And he's super hesitant, apparently, to spend his trade exception because I feel like there's plenty of players he could have tried to use this on already, and he hasn't. So I feel like they're kind of limited now, and they only have a few guys left. But
There's not much left. There's not much left. And there's a few guys that could be available, but it's going to cost them a lot of draft picks, quite a few. So it's hard to say. It's hard to say what they should do with them. But if they want to capitalize on the primes of these guys, especially with Kemba aging a little bit, they got to do something. They were so close to competing last year. So close. And this year, the conference is pretty much wide open. I can see them being as high as number 2 seed. But right now, I don't know. I don't know what they should do. They definitely got to do something, and it's going to cost them some kind of draft capital. That's how those trade exceptions work.
yeah, I mean, yes and no. Like in reality, like a lot of the value is the fact that another team is getting the
Losing
exception.
is losing $28 million of salary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, with the exception, like I guess a couple of players that we spoke about looking at, one like immediately, I think that jumps out of the table. I think they said they want scoring. I mean, if they could get Victor Oladipo, that'd be great for them. Obviously, one of the better scorers in the league and a pretty affordable contract. Plus, he's a free agent at the end of the year. They could determine what they want to do with him. Before he went to Houston, he had necessarily not wanted to report there. So I feel like he wants, I guess, a more established market, somewhere where he's going to get recognition. And Boston is that type of place if he does want to stay there moving forward. I don't know if they could afford him after this year, even if they get him. But in terms of just creating that roster, making it just that much deeper, being able to compete with the Milwaukee's, the Brooklyns, maybe even the Torontos and Miamis, I think it actually would be very good for them in that regard.
See, I if I'm thinking of Oladipo, that's my biggest issue is how much he's going to get paid next year. He's only getting paid $21 million this year, and I think he's going to be a little greedy. That's why I don't know if Boston does it, just because it could cost them significant draft capital, and they'll be in a luxury tax hell for the future. The two names that come to mind for me, one is a little more ideal than the other, but it'll cost a little bit more. One is definitely Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon out in Orlando. They come out. Brad Stevens has come out and said that they need a bit of shooting, but at the forward positions. Jason Tatum, he can play power forward, but this lineup is a little bit deadlier at this whenever he is playing at more of the small forward, and they can bring in someone to hit those power forward minutes for him. And Aaron Gordon just is a great fit. Plus, Orlando next year, they're not going to need Aaron Gordon anymore. With Jonathan Isaac coming back from injury, that's a team that they could actually use draft capital more so than they can use Gordon right now, just because they're not looking to even be a playoff team this year.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, Gordon's the guy who I've been saying it for a
Yeah.
month. Realistically, they should go after. Like the comment that they wanted someone who could play both forward positions, small and power, is pretty much just right in Aaron Gordon's wheelhouse. The only hesitancy to me is that he's not the best shooter. He's more of a getting to the rim guy. But again, at the same time, for the position they need, I think he's the best fit salary wise. What is it, 18 mil? So they still get
Yeah.
to keep $10 million of that exception. Or like if they don't want to give up any capital, they could probably just give them the whole 28. They just get Gordon for that, just because Orlando's going to get $28 million in cap relief. Like that's actually a pretty big thing in the NBA. Plus they still have Aaron Gordon for next year as well. Who like he's still a very good player, even though like I said, he might not be the best shooter. Like he's still a good player and he can shoot on whatever given night. So like I'd say he's probably the A. I agree in terms of them getting. just if I think the best player, if there's someone to get, it'd probably be Oladipo, but the more likely I'd agree it's Aaron Gordon.
But even with those two players, that being said, I don't really see the Magic giving up on Gordon. I think they still really think he's a great player. I don't think they're going to give him away for no draft picks. I just don't see that happening just because he's on that extra year of a contract, and they still do believe in him. And if, especially this year, he's going to get more minutes than he would have regularly, and they could get a little bit better than just an exception for Aaron Gordon. Um, but that's where it comes down to how greedy is Boston with their draft picks. Because in my mind, if you're going after Oladipo, it's going to cost you 2 first-round picks likely, or at least one, and unprotected. And you don't know if he can going to sign back, because whenever you factor in Jaylen Brown's contract on top of Kemba's contract, it gets really tough to fit in another $30+ million contract that Oladipo is going to want.
Mm-hmm.
So that it's hard to give up draft capital for someone that you don't get the next year. And the same thing with Aaron Gordon, where you're going to have him for next year, and that is an affordable contract to work in rather than 30 million. But I don't see that happening without at least a draft pick.
Yeah,
Eric
then
Gordon's a much better option. If they don't want to give up anyone, if they don't want to give up any kind of draft capital, then Eric Gordon could be an option, just because Houston, they might want to get out of that contract for the next 3 years. I think that would be probably a mistake on Boston's end to keep that salary when they can replace it with a better player like Aaron Gordon. But it's in the realm of possibilities.
yeah, I mean, even guys like Harrison Barnes, like that could be
Yep.
another guy they bring in, just because they do have such a large window. Buddy Hield, like I don't feel
Yep.
like maybe not as likely because his contract is, I guess, it's a bit longer and it's larger too. But yeah, like they could really bring in a lot of guys who are between the guard to forward position,
Yep.
who could obviously score. That's the big thing. They know they want points. I feel like they want 3-point shooting. Evan Fournier too for the Magic. You never know. That
Yep.
could be,
You never know.
yeah, definitely. But I'm still pretty firm. Like I'd say it's probably Aaron Gordon.
Aaron
He
Gordon.
seems, like you
Yeah.
said, too, from Orlando's perspective. There's a room where they don't really feel like, I guess, he belongs as much because Jonathan Isaac obviously being there, Terrence Ross obviously in the guard forward position. They keep Fournier, obviously he's for guard forward as well. So Aaron Gordon kind of is the just lost man out there.
Lost.
Yeah, so it makes sense for them to kind of move on from that perspective too. It reminds me a lot of like Sean Marion in Phoenix, obviously, whenever teams moved on from him. And I think it'd be kind of the same thing for Gordon. Solid player, still very athletic, can make a difference. And Boston could be a very good option for him to prove that again.
I just hope that Boston's willing to give up at least one draft pick. In fact, I think that's what it's going to take. But I think that Boston needs to make a move to be able to compete this year. I don't know if they're competing right now, especially with the Western Conference. So, yeah, my money would be on someone like Aaron Gordon bringing in. He just seems to be exactly what they're looking for. But if not, there is plenty of shooters around the league that they can bring in just to get a quick spark if that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. But let us know what you guys think in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you soon with some more content.